Caracas wakes beneath heavy clouds and heavier rhetoric. Inside the capital's government hall, the red banners of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela hang like signals from another era. Cameras flash, ministers shift in their seats, and then, rising to the podium, Diosdado Cabello, the veteran revolutionary, now Interior Minister, looks directly into the lenses. His words are sharp, defiant, and deliberate. What is certain is that this country has been preparing for any situation. We have been preparing not to dig ourselves into a trench. That is not the concept. We have discussed it on several occasions, prolonged active resistance. Let's prepare ourselves.
No para meternos en una trinchera. Ese no es el concepto. Lo hemos hablado ya en varias ocasiones. Resistencia activa, prolongada. Prepararnos.
He says Venezuela will place weapons in the hands of the people. The statement lands like an explosion in Latin America's already charged air. To Washington, it sounds like provocation. To Caracas, it is sovereignty. Cabello speaks of preparation, of resistance that does not hide in trenches but endures on the streets among citizens loyal to what he calls the Bolivarian revolution. We have been preparing, he says, not to dig ourselves into a trench. That is not the concept. We have discussed it many times, prolonged active resistance. His tone is not theatrical. It is militant calm, the cadence of a man used to crisis. Behind him, portraits of Chavez and Bolivar frame the scene, as if watching. For months, tensions have escalated between Caracas and Washington. The United States, accusing Venezuelan officials of aiding drug cartels, deployed warships and aircraft to the Caribbean in what it calls an anti-narcotics mission. But to Venezuela's leadership, the move reeks of regime change déjà vu. They see gunmetal on the horizon, not patrols, but preparation for invasion. The audience in the press hall nods in rhythm with Cabello's sentences. Among them sits Nicolas Maduro Guerra, son of President Maduro, listening intently. The party faithful understand the symbolism, the revolution arming itself again, not metaphorically, but literally. Cabello's declaration pierces through Venezuela's ongoing humanitarian turmoil. Inflation still strangles families, sanctions keep medicines scarce, and yet the government's priority now is to organize civilian defense units. These Bolivarian militias already number in the hundreds of thousands. Now they may hold state-issued weapons. He clarifies, citing the Constitution, the monopoly on arms belongs to the state, but, he adds, the state has decided that the country's weapons should be in the hands of the people for their protection. For supporters, it's empowerment. For critics, it's a march toward militarized populism. Outside, the streets of Caracas hum with the contradictions of this new policy. In the hills of Petare, young men paint murals of Chavez beside rusting rifles. In downtown cafes, whispers rise. Will these weapons defend the nation or the party? They decide the phase. We decided long ago to be free, and we are prepared for any phase.
Nosotros decidimos hace tiempo ser libres y estamos preparados para cualquier fase.
According to this constitution, the monopoly on weapons belongs to the state. The state has decided that the country's weapons, the state's weapons, should be in the hands of the people for their protection. And that is what we have been doing.
El Estado ha decidido que las armas del país, del Estado, estén en manos del pueblo para su protección. Y eso es lo que nosotros hemos venido haciendo. Nadie debe extrañarse.
The opposition wastes no time. Spokespeople for what remains of Venezuela's democratic coalition call the announcement a threat against the people themselves. They argue that placing arms into civilian hands risks chaos, creating militias loyal not to the republic but to the ruling party. Exiled opposition figure Leopoldo Lopez calls it the Cubanization of Venezuela's defense system. In Washington, officials at the Pentagon express concern. While no formal response comes from the White House, sources brief reporters anonymously, calling the move reckless and destabilizing. Analysts recall 2020 when US Navy destroyers patrolled these same waters during the Trump administration. The difference now is the rhetoric from both sides has grown louder, darker, and more personal. Across the Caribbean, radar screens glow with the silhouettes of US aircraft. Venezuelan state TV broadcasts footage of drills, soldiers crawling through mud, flags waving, chants of Patria o muerte echoing through the fields. The narrative is clear. Venezuela stands alone, encircled but unbroken. Cabello insists they decide the phase. We decided long ago to be free. His defiance resonates with a population long conditioned to see external enemies as validation of national strength. We are prepared for any phase, he concludes, his fist lifting slightly before the crowd breaks into applause. The slogan that ends the event, "Que viva Chavez, que viva Maduro," is both a salute and a signal, continuity above all. For Cabello, defending the revolution means defending its mythology, the memory of Hugo Chavez as eternal commander, the dream of a people sovereign against imperial pressure. But behind the slogans lies a sobering reality. Venezuela's economy remains crippled. Oil production, once the pride of the nation, has fallen to a fraction of its past output. The exodus of migrants, more than 7 million since 2015, has drained communities of youth and labor. Now those who remain are told they are the shield of the homeland. At military academies, instructors revise manuals to include civil-military coordination. State television runs patriotic songs between food ration announcements. In rural states like Apure and Bolívar, militias already patrol river crossings, ostensibly to deter smuggling and sabotage. Yet human rights groups warn these forces often act beyond the law, blurring the line between citizen defense and armed intimidation. Internationally, reactions ripple fast. Colombia urges restraint, fearing spillover violence along its porous border. Brazil's foreign ministry releases a cautious statement emphasizing regional stability. The Organization of American States calls for dialogue, but Caracas dismisses it as a puppet of Washington. In Moscow, the Kremlin remains silent publicly, though Russian advisors continue to assist Venezuela's armed forces. Iran issues a statement of solidarity, framing the US naval presence as neo-colonial aggression. China, Venezuela's largest creditor, avoids direct comment but reiterates respect for sovereignty and non-interference. Through all this, Cabello becomes more than a minister. He becomes the voice of defiance. His rhetoric mirrors that of Chavez in 2002, when tanks first rolled near Miraflores Palace during the coup attempt. But this time the enemy, he says, is external and invisible until it's too late. The streets tell another story. In a bakery in Catia, Maria Fernandez wipes flour from her hands and shakes her head at the news. They talk about weapons, she says softly, but what we need is food. Her sentiment echoes across social media, where Venezuelans debate whether resistance means survival or submission. Meanwhile, pro-government rallies sweep through the city. Tens of thousands in red shirts raise fists and wooden mock rifles. State media frames it as people's defense readiness. Loudspeakers boom Cabello's declaration again and again. Each repetition turns words into creed. Analysts note that Venezuela's military doctrine has evolved since the US invasion of Iraq and NATO's interventions elsewhere. The concept of guerra de todo el pueblo, the war of all the people, borrows from Cuban defense strategy. Every citizen a potential combatant, every street a barricade. Cabello's statement institutionalizes that idea. In private, diplomats express alarm. At the United Nations, representatives quietly debate whether Venezuela's internal arming violates international arms control agreements. But without consensus, the issue stalls. Caracas celebrates the silence as victory. For Venezuelan citizens, though, silence has another sound: the absence of electricity in the evening, the whir of generators, the murmur of uncertainty. Who will hold these weapons? Who will command them? And when the next protest erupts over fuel or wages, who will they aim at? Still, for now, loyalty is rewarded. Party members volunteer for territorial defense brigades, attending training sessions in stadiums under banners reading Defensa de la Patria, Misión Bolivariana. Videos flood TikTok and Telegram, men and women in mismatched uniforms chanting revolutionary slogans as they lift old Kalashnikovs. Each clip garners thousands of shares, half in pride, half in fear. Inside Miraflores, President Maduro remains mostly silent, allowing Cabello to play the role of hardliner while he, the president, positions himself as statesman. It's a familiar dance in Venezuelan politics, the fire and the diplomat alternating between threat and negotiation. US analysts at think tanks in Washington argue that the decision to arm civilians could backfire, accelerating internal fractures within the ruling movement. But Cabello seems unshaken. His political survival, intertwined with the PSUV's dominance, depends on projecting control of the party, the army, and now, potentially, the armed citizenry. Long live Chavez, long live Maduro, he repeats as cameras flash. Outside, the crowd echoes back. The chant reverberates across the capital's hills through tin roofs and broken windows, a sound of unity or of desperation. As night descends over Caracas, the anti-narcotics ships continue their slow patrol in the Caribbean. From the Venezuelan coast, fishermen can see their faint lights on the horizon, silent reminders of the standoff's scale. In military outposts along the Orinoco, young recruits whisper about what might come next. A sense of waiting fills the air, waiting for an invasion that may never arrive or for a misstep that could make it real. For international observers, the episode marks another chapter in Venezuela's transformation from an oil powerhouse into a fortress state. Cabello's words may rally his base, but they also underline how deeply isolated the country has become. Even regional allies hesitate to echo such militarization publicly. Yet to many within Venezuela's leadership, isolation is proof of righteousness. Cabello's speech is not simply about defense, it is ideology reborn as security policy. To them, the revolution survives because it resists. And resistance, they argue, requires weapons. The coming weeks will reveal how literal that vision becomes. Already, shipments of ammunition and small arms circulate under the label of community defense resources. Local commanders oversee registration drives, while propaganda videos showcase women farmers learning to assemble rifles. For the outside world, these images evoke unease. For Caracas, they represent resolve. In the end, the minister's message is unmistakable. Venezuela's defense no longer rests solely in barracks, but in neighborhoods, schools, and factories. Every citizen, Cabello says, is a soldier of the revolution. The hall erupts once more in applause. He steps back from the podium, raises his fist, and repeats the names that bind the movement's mythology: Chavez and Maduro. The room answers in unison. Cameras click, chants rise, and for a moment, the illusion of strength feels real. Outside, thunder rolls across the valley. Whether it's a storm or something larger, no one can yet tell.
Además, coincidió que fue la semana esta donde hubo una cantidad de eventos sísmicos, el Día Internacional para la Reducción del Riesgo de Desastre. Bueno, nosotros hace para la narrativa, ¿no? Que desmantelaran algún cartel y culminó con la inauguración del monumento a Guaycaipuro. ¿Y de dónde venimos nosotros? Del Día del Descubrimiento.
Diciendo que sí, ojalá esto no fuera, pero va a haber un ataque a Venezuela, todos los pueblos de la revolución. La segunda es que, y esto quiero subotar de una investigación del New York Times, que confirma todo lo que usted estaba diciendo, todo lo que...
Ni un solo incidente, ni uno solo, para que vamos al nivel de conciencia. ¡Que viva Chávez! ¡Que viva Maduro!